Hi. Good evening, everyone. So welcome to the Skills Workshop's 30th Virtual Careers Fair. My name is Charlene Sayani, and I will be your host for tonight. Brief intro to myself is I've been at Investec now for 3 years, and I work in the careers team, working on kind of candidate experience through interviews, and I've just taken on a little bit more responsibility in the early careers space. Not feeling my best today, but I'm grateful to be here on the call with all of you to share about Investec. But yeah, like I said, this is the final week of the careers fair, and tonight you're going to be hearing all about Investec from our speakers. So I really hope you've got your pens, notepads, everything ready, just so that you can take down some really valuable insights from our talk today. And hopefully you've got some questions ready for us too. I'm really pleased to be joined by Michelle, Kartik, and Mohammed, who work across our business, and they're going to be sharing, what they do on a day-to-day basis, and also their kind of experience of working at Investec in particular. So if I can just quickly hand over to Kartik to start off, just a brief intro to yourself, and then hand back over to me once you're done.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Charlene. Hi, I'm Kartik Rawal. I'm an investment manager at Investec Wealth and Investment, and I work in our London office. I've been at Investec for 8 years now, and hopefully I'm looking forward to telling you a bit about my career, but I think the most value we'll get is from the questions and answers later on. Thanks, Charlene.
Over to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Charlene. So Michelle White, and I work very closely with Kartik. Actually, I'm a fellow investment director in the wealth management business here at Investec. I've been at the firm for 5 months, having joined from a Swiss private bank recently. And yes, similarly, look forward to sharing stories of my entry into the industry and career and what we do and what's fun about it with you all tonight.
Perfect. And Mo, if you want to do just a quick intro to yourself as well.
Sure. Thank you, Charlene. Hi, everyone. I'm Mo. I've been at Investec for 5 years. I work in the specialist bank, and I could explain later what that actually means. I sit in London office also, and also looking forward to any questions that you might have later on.
Perfect. So now that we all know who we are, this is just a quick reminder. Like Mo said, we're really interested in your questions that you may have. So please do use the Q&A function. Pop anything in there throughout the webinar. We're going to monitor that, and we'll try to get through as many of those questions as we can. So over to you, Kartik and Michelle, to kickstart our webinar today about our wealth business. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I thought, first of all, I'll just set the scene and give everyone a bit of background about Investec itself. So we are, just in case you haven't heard of us, we are a financial services organization. We are based in the UK and South Africa. Our origins are actually in South Africa, and we sort of came across to the UK in the early 2000s. We've grown in the UK by acquisition, so we've bought lots of different companies, but we've also grown organically. And the business is split into 2 very distinct areas. There is one part which Mo's going to talk about later, which is our banking business. But the part that Michelle and I sit within is the wealth and investment management division. I'm going to ask Michelle to also come off mute, because I think we'll sort of have a little conversation about it. But sure. I thought it would be worth giving everyone a view of my background, and that gives people a sense of how I started my career, where I sort of came from. So I went to school, got incredibly bad GCSE results and terrible A-level results. Just about managed to get into university through clearing. And I read history and politics at university. So I was the first person in my family to go to university. My parents are sort of immigrants into the UK, from East Africa, and they've always said to me, education is the greatest thing that they could give me. So they said, go to university, but read whatever you want. It's not, you don't have to be a doctor or a lawyer, which is what in the Asian sort of philosophy tends to be what people put out there as the number one or two thing to do. So I left university, but during my time at university, I did some filing and internships at a few different financial institutions. One of those was a competitor of ours. It's a high street bank, and they asked me to come back onto their books on a grad scheme. So I did that for 18 months. I then moved to a different wealth manager, a substantial one, and I spent 10 years at that organisation. It was a tough time, and it was, I was basically building my way through, or working my way through a career path there. And towards the latter end of my my time at that organisation, I realised the culture at that business, at that bank, really wasn't aligned to my own values and my own feelings around how clients should be looked after. So I moved on from there, and I was looking around, and Investec came up as an opportunity, and I looked into the culture of Investec. I spoke to loads of people at the business to understand how they felt. Would they recommend working at Investec to their friends or family? And the sense I got was that the values within the business were very much shared with myself. So I joined Investec, and I've been at Investec for 8 years now. My role is I suppose the formal role title within the business is as an investment director, but actually my role is as a relationship manager. And I was going to ask Michelle, that's pretty accurate, isn't it, in terms of how we operate?
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's all sorts of different terms, aren't there? Investment manager, investment director, wealth manager, relationship manager, all of these things, and we'll talk more about what we actually do. But yes, realistically, we're here, of course, to help the firm make money, but our predominant job in terms of the clients is to look after them and really open, sort of a bit of a conductor role, I think, isn't it, as we see it? So we're there to sort of open any and every door at the firm that can be of use to our clients, and we manage the relationship with them as a result of that.
Yeah, and I think someone said to me that actually we're a bit like GPs, so general practitioners. We know a little bit about lots of things, but we bring in specialists for our clients as and when needed. Michelle, do you want to talk about how you got into the industry, and then we can focus on what we actually do and what our team does?
Yes, of course. So interestingly, I'm thinking how similar or different it is to your story, Kartik. So my parents were a chartered accountant and a bank manager. So unsurprisingly, I've ended up in finance, I would suppose, very much followed their footsteps. I did want to study at one point accountancy at university, and my mother said that was absolutely not allowed because it was boring, and she wouldn't allow me to also become an accountant, which I don't know if I agree with that, but anyway, I wasn't allowed. I wanted to be a lawyer originally, but sort of maybe in a similar vein, didn't quite get the predicted grades that I needed to go to the university I wanted to go to study law. So sort of went down the maths and economics route and studied international business and economics at Lancaster University with some German, which was good. And then it was a bit of a story of, it's as much about who you know as what you know, I suppose, for my entry into the industry. So, of course, I applied to grad schemes. To be honest, I probably didn't really know what I was applying for. I remember applying for a job in fixed income at one point, and I had no idea what that meant. I think I thought that meant a fixed salary position, which obviously I now know has nothing to do with that. But in the end, I got my first job at Lehman Brothers, which obviously doesn't exist anymore. But that was really a who you know thing. So I used to play a lot of hockey, and when I was up at university, a few friends who were still back down in Hertfordshire at the club emailed when email had just been invented and said, oh, we've got a lady at the hockey club who is the chief operating officer for the wealth management division at Lehman Brothers. Don't you want to sort of do something in finance? And I said, oh yeah, absolutely. And I met her, and she was trying to get a few of us in on internships, basically. And completely fair enough, she gave the 2 internships that she was able to secure to 2 people who she knew at the club, which was fair enough. But what she did do was circulate my CV to the whole department. And, you know, out of the blue, one day I basically got a call saying, would I go in for an interview? And then got the job there as a sales assistant, which in that sense is quite, I would say, a traditional entry route into, certainly into wealth management. So a sales assistant really, or again, there's so many names for it: sales assistant, associate, junior banker, junior wealth manager, junior investment manager, all of these things, is really there to support and do anything and everything they can, basically, to help the lead relationship manager look after clients and win business. So it's a really good training ground, I would say, for coming in and learning from the ground up, you know, how we actually open accounts, how do we make payments, how do we report for clients, how do we do all of the administrative side, which I think makes us probably better bankers today, having done all of those bits. But let me hand back over to you, Kartik, and then we can keep handing the baton back and forth.
So it's interesting. We work together, but I don't know the detail of your background. So that's really great. It's a good opportunity for me to learn. So what do we do? I think the best way to explain it is that we're not in the business of being stockbrokers. So we don't sit at our desks buying stocks and shares or fixed income, as Michelle talked about earlier, all day long. That is not our role. There are people out there who do that in investment banks, but our role is actually about, it's very client focused. It's about looking after the client, number one. So our job is to listen, and actually we're often compared to counselors. So it's to listen to a client, understand what they want from their money. These are wealthy people. These are wealthy individuals, compared to me anyway. And they want to do something with their money. Sometimes it's charitable and philanthropic. Sometimes it's to help support their children in education. Sometimes it's to save for retirement. So our job is to understand those objectives, put together plans for them, understand, what they have they got pensions and ISAs, get into the real sort of nitty-gritty detail of those things, and then suggest options, and those could be investment options. And what we do there is we are very much team focused. So we have Michelle and I, we look after clients directly. We are client facing. We have people we work with who are very much administrative in terms of making sure that the engineering in the background is really working for clients. And then we have portfolio managers who are actually pulling the levers for client portfolios. So if we have suggested investments, those are the people day to day making sure that those portfolios run in the way that the clients expect them to run. Behind us as a team, though, we don't do everything. So Michelle, do you want to talk a bit about our research function and how we get all our information, and maybe financial planning a little bit?
Yes. Yeah, sure. And maybe useful to sort of describe that offering in a sort of more pictorial way as well. I always think of it as we describe it to clients as the 3 core pillars of wealth management, if you like. So that would be financial planning, investments, and lending. They're the kind of 3 things that if we can help clients with all of those, then we really can come up with a sort of holistic plan for them and their family, really. And specifically with respect to financial planning, just to touch briefly on that, we have, again, experts that work with us in-house on all of that sort of efficient structuring advice as we talk about it, sort of making sure people are making the most out of their annual allowances that HMRC affords, getting things into an as efficient place as possible before we move on to the investments. And the people that help us there are often ex-tax advisors, lawyers that have previously worked at other firms and then have now come in-house to work with us directly with clients, which is a huge benefit. On the investment side, all of our recommendations and advice are backed up by, as Kartik mentions, this sort of the research powerhouse, if you like, all of the intellectual capital that the firm has there. So that's looking at the economics of the world, the politics, the individual company situations, interest rates, price of commodities, all of these things that we have to monitor all the time to make sure that we're aware of the risks and taking the right opportunities and risks for our clients in the investment piece. And at Investec, that's very much a global team. So big team, one of the biggest teams we've got here in the UK sits with us here at this firm in London. And then we've also got a big team in South Africa as well.
Fantastic. I'm just thinking actually in terms of timing, one of those pillars you mentioned, Michelle, was lending, and bank, that comes under our sort of banking division. So perhaps we can actually hand over to Mo, who's on the line here, and he can talk through banking and what he does.
Thank you, Kartik and Michelle. So as they mentioned, I work in the specialist bank, and our key operation and the specialist bank is lending. We do other stuff. So we do advisory work, we do trading, etc. But the key bit is lending. Just to give you a rough idea of how big we are as an organization, the UK division, we're about 9th just in terms of size. So that's somewhere between Virgin Money and TSB. So we're behind in terms of revenue, behind the high street banks that you would have heard of, like HSBC, Barclays, etc. We're 9th. In terms of geography, so we've got offices right across UK. We've got offices in India, in New York, in Switzerland, Hong Kong. And in terms of lending, so we lend to high net worth individuals. So in terms of what that means, that for us means someone who's earning about 300,000 a year, or they've got assets that are worth 3 million. So that's the high net worth individual. We help them with getting mortgages, or if they want a second property, etc. We also lend a lot to companies, majority of which are unlisted companies, so you may not have heard of them. So if a client comes in and, I don't know, they want to open they want to create some solar panels, or if an airline approaches us and they wanted some money to get another aircraft, those are the sort of things that we help them with. Let me talk a little bit about my background and how I got into banking. And then I could sort of, once I do that, I could talk about what I actually do for the bank. So I'm from Afghanistan. I was born there. I moved into the UK when I was 9, and I couldn't really speak any English. I could just about the alphabet. So it was a very interesting first couple of years to adapt to a new culture, to learn the language. And I started out at a pretty rough school in West London. So this school was in the newspapers for the wrong reasons. So my GCSEs and just sort of like the whole journey of how I went through school was quite interesting, quite eventful. But I done okay. I think my parents were quite strict in terms of my upbringing. So I sort of always managed to just stay on the right side of the line. And then I went to A-levels. In terms of uni, I was being pushed, again, Asian parents, pushed towards becoming a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, but I sort of didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I went and done maths because I was naturally good at it. So I done maths at Queen Mary. And again, after I done that, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And my brother persuaded me to go and do a master's in economics. And his reasoning was it will open doors. So I went to City to do a master's. And I guess right throughout uni and right throughout my master's, I was working quite a lot in retail. And it's interesting how a lot of the things I learned in retail, a lot of those skills are quite transferable, and I use them at Investec every day. Skills like, I guess, how to speak to customers, how to handle different deadlines, etc. Was really useful. So I finished my master's, and again, I was sort of like, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had sort of kept myself open to different opportunities. So I remember I was applying for quite a lot of graduate positions. So I got to a point where I had an offer to work in recruitment. At the same time, I had an offer to work in an insurance company. And then I knew about Investec beforehand. So I had these two offers, and I came upon a vacancy in Investec. And I just thought, okay, I'm in full application mode, so I applied for Investec as well. I knew about Investec beforehand because I was doing quite a lot of different programs when I was younger, and I had come into Investec, funnily enough, as a 15-year-old to come and polish bankers' shoes and make money. And I recall then that these bankers with their, at the time I felt £200 shoes, etc., were quite nice. They were offering, I mean, the shoes was pretty clean, but they would still sort of like give the shoes, and they would give me like £7 just to polish their shoe very quickly. Not very well, I must say. So I had recorded that, and I was like, okay, like I had a good feeling about Investec, and I applied. And I came into the interview phase, and I told them from the start, I was like, look, I've got an offer, but here is my history with Investec. I'd like to see how it goes. And I sort of didn't have any pressure because I was already okay in terms of the offers. So I had a couple of interviews, and at the end of it, they offered me a role to come and work as a risk analyst and a reporter. At the time, I had no idea what it meant. I remember I joined pretty quick. I joined about a month after, and I sort of sat in my first day, and again, had no idea what a bank did, had no idea what I was doing. And then I recall quite early, I was, my manager took me in a meeting with the executives. So at the time we had the founders that were still working with us, Stephen Kosef. So I was in a meeting quite early with the top executives, not knowing what I was doing and not knowing why I was even there. But they were nice. They introduced themselves, they asked me who I was. And I think just in terms of culture, that's the sort of place where we're trying to be. It's where I think a key part of investing, I'd probably say, is the culture and how people make you feel. I mean, I joined because of how they had made me feel like when I was 15. In terms of what I do for the bank, my job is, I'd probably say, I'm a journalist. So I do quite a lot of reports. And in those reports, I find out what sort of deals we're doing. So if I come up with insights like 10% off a book is airlines, things like that, 20% is property. And the whole point is that I give that message to senior managers so that they could decide how the bank is doing. and they approve future deals. So if you feel like we've made too many loans to property, that's probably not a good thing, because you don't want your whole book to be property. So then we say it's about 20%. So they say, okay, that's probably enough. And we sort of, the message passes down to our client-facing roles. And we sort of say, okay, we don't really have too much appetite to do any more property deals. Or if we do, we sort of say, okay, we do, and we're open to these sort of deals. So that's the sort of the everyday. In terms of the key skills, I'd probably say being able to solve problems would probably be a key skill. Just knowing what people want and being able to solve that. Also, I'd probably say you get quite a few deadlines coming at the same time. So being able to, almost like a juggler, being able to, I guess, do different things at the same time and being able to prioritize one thing over another. I've spoken quite a lot, so I'm going to stop here and hand over to, who am I handing over to? To Charlene for questions, I guess.
Yeah, so there's been some interesting questions coming through. Please do keep popping them in the chat box, but I'll start with the ones that we've got so far that have come to me privately. So Mo, I think you've just finished, so let's go to you. There is a question for you. You mentioned that the culture is different and it's what stands out for you. What is the culture like at Investec?
For me, it's a very informal culture. You could approach anyone and you could, they'll make time for you and you could speak to anyone. So if you come into our offices, people don't have their own offices. It's an open floor. So you could literally walk to someone else's desk and speak to them. That was a bit different during COVID, but during COVID, you could literally call someone on Teams or on WebEx. But now that we're in a hybrid phase, you could again walk to someone's desk and ask if they've got a couple of minutes to speak to you. So it's quite informal. Because we're still a fairly new organization, our founders, I mean, they left the company not long ago. They retired not long ago. So we still have that scrappy and entrepreneurial side to us still. So if you have an idea and if you want to change something, then people don't really stop you from doing that. So for example, one of the things that I'm really interested in is climate change, environment, sustainability, etc. And I'm able to bring that into my role and sort of say, okay, as a reporter, someone who's reporting risk, I should be really close to knowing what's going on and knowing the impact that we are having on the climate. So no, my manager would never stop me and say, okay, no, that's actually not part of your role. You can't do that. You almost get the invitation and the support from your managers to do things that are different and that are potentially outside your role.
Yeah, I think one of the famous sayings at Investec is that you should ask for forgiveness rather than permission. So not asking for permission to run with things that you want to do, but just apologizing at the end if it just doesn't go the way it's meant to. Hey, thank you very much. So Kartik, there's a question for you. What does your day-to-day look like in the wealth business if it's 9 to 5?
It's not 9 to 5. It's not 9 to 5. The beauty of our role, actually, and I'm sure Michelle will agree to this, is that no day is the same. Like the day is, I mean, it changes. And in reality, our time is our clients' time. So, you know, it's the whatever our clients are needing and looking for. If they need engagement and we need to talk to them, then we'll do a Teams call, Zoom call, pick up the phone to them or meet them face to face nowadays again. So a lot of my time during the day is engaging with clients. In the morning, though, the first thing that I would do is look at the newspapers, look at the financial press on my phone on the way into work, listen to podcasts, sometimes about finance, sometimes about sport, but just understand what's been going on in the world. And then it's really just touching base with the team if there's time, if there's no client contact. And then it's really, again, it's all about client contact and engagement. There's a lot of administration we've got to do as well. We are highly regulated. Everything we do, say, look at is regulated. So there's a lot of time that is devoted to that administrative bit. Michelle, you're going to come in there.
Yeah, can do. I think the variety of what we do is the best, and I suppose the most challenging part of the whole role, right? So you can see what a day is going to look like because you know what meetings you've got, you know what calls you've got, you know what proposals you've got to get out that day and things like that. But at the same time, you need to be ready for anyone to call you at any time and ask about sterling dollar exchange rate, what we think, how the market's going to react to what the US president just said, what's going to happen to commodity prices because of something that just happened in Japan. Oh, and by the way, what happened in the budget today? How's that going to affect our tax planning? And on and on and on and on. And that's the beauty of it, and that's, I think, what attracted me to it, because it's like you say, no 2 days are the same really, so that keeps it exciting. But it's also a challenge, and like Mo said, you know, you've got to manage deadlines as well as keep on top of all of these things. And I would add maybe to Mo's chat about the culture as well. I think I love this. I've only been here 5 months, as I said, but I've heard so many times already the sort of Investec mantra of the firm inviting and wanting everyone to bring their whole self to work. And we hear that a lot. And I don't know if it sounds cheesy or not to people on the call, but people really do that here. And it is a true invitation. You know, like Kartik's laughing. I mean, we work together from a distance at another firm. But, you know, we've worked together properly now for 4 months or 5 months or whatever it is now. But I probably know more about Kartik and everyone else in our team of 12 or 15 people that we are. I mean, I know more about those people than I do with people I worked with for years at other institutions. Everyone, you know, it's certainly a culture and an environment where people feel comfortable doing that, you know, and that, I think that makes a huge difference, because as Kartik says, unfortunately it's not 9 to 5, so we spend an awful lot of time with our colleagues in person and online, and the more you know about them, probably the more you like them, and again the more enjoyable that is. So definitely they've got that right.
Perfect. And actually, to you, Kartik and Michelle, again, they said, mention a lot of time is face-to-face with your clients. Of what clients you specifically work with?
Gosh, right, yeah, good question. So where do we start with that one? So private clients, I suppose, is the first answer to that. So that means we deal with individuals and their families as opposed to corporates. So on the bank side that Mo described, outside of the private client team there, they're mainly dealing with listed companies, private equity firms, any kind of company or fund or vehicle that might need lending or any other advice and service that we can offer. We deal with individuals and we help the family structure themselves properly. Then within that, we do deliberately sort of segment, because every client is different, but you do get commonality between clients. So there's certain things that entrepreneurs will need or want, and we can service that in a sensible and thoughtful way. And if we think about the clients as a group, we can build meaningful solutions and offerings for them. Similarly, we'll group city professionals as one group, for example. So that might be lawyers, accountants, architects, engineers. You know, they all have certain demands as well because of the way their compensation and their employment and everything is structured. Similarly with people in, say, the private equity, hedge fund industry, and so on. So that would be my sort of high-level answer to that, Kartik, but please add.
No, I don't have much to add to that. I would say our team is very much focused on high net worth clients. So Mo talked a little bit about what high net worth means to the bank. To us, it's clients with 3 million of assets or above. So something to really work with, something that we can really help with. I mean, over my career, I've focused on, I suppose it's called new money or first generation money, but I think ultimately that means people who have made their own money as opposed to inherited it. And I don't know why, but I just, it's a personal sort of preference and it's a niche. And actually, if there was one bit of advice that I would give anyone in our sector, or thinking about this sort of role, it's to try and focus on an area that you're really interested in. Same way as university, if you're going to do a degree, do something you're quite interested in because you tend to do better at it. So.
Perfect, thank you so much. Mo, a question for you. What motivates you in your role? What keeps you going?
Wow. So I'm a bit nerdy in the sense that I enjoy what I do. So that means I do enjoy getting stuck in and looking at data, making sense out of that data and trying to give insights. So that's a key aspect of my role, is to look through lots of data, narrow it down into what's key, and being able to put that, as a journalist would do, on key insights and to pass that on. So I really enjoy that. But outside that, I think I've mentioned culture, but also just in terms of the flexibility that my role offers is quite motivation to me. So I already touched that. I'm really into sustainability, and I've been able to bring that into my role. So now I look at things like how much CO2 the companies that we're lending to, how much CO2 they're emitting in a given year. And I'm interested in that, and I'm able to do that. And I think that's going to lead to some really important insights on what we could do to try and transition the economy in a place where net zero, for example, decarbon the economy. In terms of, again, stuff outside the role, I'm quite busy with, I love organizing events, and I love interacting with different people and holding cultural events, etc. So my role allows me to bring that into my everyday. So we have networks, staff networks at Investec. So we have the Multicultural Network, we have Gender Balance Network, we have Young Minds Network, and we have LGBTQ+ Network. I'm involved quite a lot of the Multicultural Network. So we do events around Diwali, we do events around Black History Month, etc. And that's quite exciting for me. And my role and the people I work with allow me and support me to do things like that. So it's the role itself and the stuff that I do every day that I get paid for. And at the same time, the stuff that I don't get paid for that I enjoy that I could bring in.
I think Shailene has dropped off. So look, I can see the questions here. Michelle or Mo, maybe I can ask you a question. There's a question here about work-life balance. So you're both in the office. I'm sat here comfortably at home, but I was in the office earlier. So could you talk, Michelle, I'll go to you first, ladies first. What do you think about work-life balance in our role?
I think it is very important, and you know, the whole COVID nightmare has been tragic and awful in many, many, many ways, most ways. But I suppose the one positive thing that might have come out of it is definitely a renewed and enlarged acceptance of workplace flexibility. So, many companies, including our own, have proven that you can work from home and be trusted to work from home if you have the right people. If you've got the right employees, they will work their socks off for you wherever they're sat, whether you can see them or not. And that, I think, will make a huge difference in terms of work-life balance conversations and just frameworks going forward, because it will no longer be, anticipated or expected or the norm that people will be in the office 5 days a week from 7 a.m. till midnight if you work in investment banking, or still long hours with what we do. We still have to work long hours because we need to get the job done, and the markets don't close till 9 o'clock New York time and things like that. So, we're always on, we're on from early until late. But the job now will be more flexible. And I suppose I would add an anecdote as well. That I remember when I started at Lehman, and my middle-aged male boss then sort of said to me, "Oh, this is brilliant that you joined the team. This is such a good career for women. The fact that we work in teams is amazing. If you go off and have children, we can support the clients and all this." And I was thinking, what is he talking about? I've just graduated. This is just so, I don't know why he's talking to me about this. But it was actually really, useful and kind advice, because actually I would say I should pass that on as well. In terms of how we work in a team, it's a wonderful career actually for women. And I know lots of women don't think that, and that's why they don't come into the industry. And there's loads of other reasons as well, so that's not the only one. But I can certainly give people comfort. I've got 2 young children now, and I've come back to work full time, and it works really well. Sometimes I work in the office, sometimes I work at home. I'm in the office a lot more than I'm not because of our client-facing obligations, and I love that, so that's fine. I've rattled on there. Mo, sorry, you talk about your work-life balance.
I think for me, the key is, and it's a bit of an advice, is to ensure that you enjoy what you do and that you can be your full self at work. Because you are spending quite a lot of time at work with people, talking to them, spending time, and sometimes it is long hours. Sometimes when you've got deadlines coming up, or when you have to the client-facing roles, when you have to meet clients, etc. I think you just have to do the work. So I can't just say it's a 9 to 5, or you could leave when you want, etc. Like, it can still be hours. So you do need to enjoy it. Having said that, I think the industry is changing, and we are getting to a stage where you don't have to sacrifice your home life and stuff like that for you to progress within the organization. And I mean that wholeheartedly. When things do come up, when you do have to be at home, or when you do have other responsibilities, I think the organization is supportive enough for you to be able to do that. So I'd probably say sometimes it can be long hours, but I think you could definitely, if you're prioritizing correctly, if you're managing your time well, I think you could definitely have a good work-life balance. And I don't think the organization would stop you necessarily from doing something that you need to get done.
Thank you very much. There's a question there. It's quite a specific question, so I'm going to read it out, and then we'll try, one of us can attempt to answer it. But it's with inflation rising and the possibility of the Bank of England increasing rates, how has that affected the lending and investment divisions? I'm not sure if that's supposed to be, say, divisions or decisions, but I'm not sure on the lending side. But as I'm acting as mediator now, Michelle, what do you think?
I knew you were going to do that. Well, there's so many different ways of answering that question, aren't there? Obviously, so we talk about inflation every day with our clients and our prospective clients. I don't want to get into any kind of jargon, but I think this is still very high level. You know, the biggest threats to our clients' wealth and earnings power are taxation and inflation. So I may have said that earlier, but that's why we sort of arrange those two pillars of the planning and then the investment management piece. So we have to build portfolios that will take into account the threat of inflation and try and return positive real returns to clients after inflation, after tax, after fees, all of these things. And so in a portfolio sense, that typically leads us to recommend equity exposure in a portfolio. But there are other assets as well that provide inflation protection, such as inflation-linked notes in the fixed income space, structured products that we can come, design with other counterparties that will benefit if the yield curve steepens and things like that. But I don't exactly know the audience here, so I don't want to get into too much technicality on that side. Debt is interesting when inflation is on the rise because inflation wipes out debt to an extent. So we do have a lot of clients that are borrowing at the moment based on that theory and based on the fact that interest rates still at the moment are very low. So yes, they're expected to rise, but actually the chance, I think, of rates going up in the UK is almost halved today after the Chancellor's comments in the comments. So that will be interesting to see if they go up next week at the Bank of England meeting. That's probably enough commentary from me on that. What were you thinking, Kartik?
I was going to say that we've got some incredible people at Investec, and inflation has actually been on our radar for a while now. And we went through COVID last year. March the 23rd is something that most financial professionals will remember because it was the bottom of the market. And the entire commentary around that period was that it was a deflationary event. And it was to begin with. But the thing that we focused on was what would the reaction be? I think everything in life has an opposite reaction. And we had a real great sense that inflation would be that reaction. So we have been preparing clients for that and preparing their portfolios for that event. And we're not 100% not fortune tellers. We don't have a crystal ball. I think our role is to have a dialogue around the markets, understand all the various risks, and then I suppose relay that into client portfolios and talk to them about it. Clients always want to be engaged with so that they understand what the potential risks are going forward, and also so they can tell their friends and have intelligent conversations about things like this. So Michelle, thank you for that rebounding question. Mo, do you want to say anything about rates, lending rates from your side?
Yeah, sure. So we do have, so if I could take a step back and explain like a simple loan, how the bank lends. A client comes in and say they want to do something, and then they say they want X amount of money to do that. So we give them, let's just say 10 million, and then they return that 10 million back to us, let's just say over 2 years, monthly payments with an interest. So for banks, one of the things we're worried about in terms from a lending side is whether we are going to get the money that we gave a client back. So we have quite a lot of fancy and very difficult models that predict if the inflation was to go up by this much, here are the sectors that might do well and how are the sectors that might not do well. So for us, as a responsible bank, I think it's for us to know which clients would potentially struggle and to speak to them beforehand and have a dialogue and to almost say, okay, the inflation's increased, here is the impact on the interest rate or on the repayment, how are you doing? And then to also be able to make the necessary adjustments if you feel like that they're going to be impacted for the worst or for the better. So really it's about knowing how ultimately a change in the macroeconomics, so whether that's inflation, interest rates, or something else, might impact your client, and being able to have the dialogue. Inflation within itself could really impact positively some of our clients and could impact negatively some of our other clients. So we just need to be able to be aware of that. I probably wouldn't be able to say exactly which sectors are going to be impacted negatively that we need to keep an eye on, because we've got very smart people who are who have these crazy models that tells them that. But for me, it's just about knowing when to have a conversation with your client and also being able to solve the problem and make the necessary adjustments to make that transition for them easier.
Thanks, Mo. Jolene, you're back. Welcome back.
I'm so sorry. I had the blue screen of death come up. Frantically trying to get back, but thank you so much for continuing the conversation. There is another question here, actually one that I could probably take. When do your internship applications open, and what does the interview process look like? So we have a summer internship program here at Investec, and it's usually about 6 to 8 weeks, and that's usually around June, July time. So applications for that will open in January 2022. It's usually open for about 3 weeks, and then we close it down, do all the shortlisting, and then we hope to have offers out by end of March. So yeah, like I said, applications open in Jan, so please do keep an eye on our website. I'll post the link to our summer internship page in the chat shortly. And then in Jan, you'll just put your application through there. In terms of the interview process, it varies, but usually it's around 2 to 3 stages. You'll have kind of an informal conversation, followed by a video interview, and then an interview with the business area that you'll be joining. And to be honest, our interview process is very conversational here at Investec. Like we said, the culture is very different. So, you know, we don't have a tick box kind of list that we go through, that we look for someone. We just really care about you and your kind of background and what kind of flair you're going to bring to the team. So that covers that, I think. But if anyone else has any questions, do pop that in the chat and I can answer that further. Another question here is there scope to travel at Investec, given that you mentioned there are offices globally? And that's to you, Mo.
That's an interesting question. Yes and no. So some jobs will require you to travel, and that's taken care of by the company, etc. If you wanna personally go somewhere, let's just say, I could probably give my example. I'm going to Glasgow for 2 weeks for COP26. So there are some days where I'm just gonna work from the Glasgow office. So those sort of things are fine. Having said that, at the same time, we as a company realized that, so we have a South African office, etc. And we probably also want to try and limit those in some ways, because we know the impact it has on the environment. So I'd probably say, as a balanced answer, I'd probably say if your job requires it, yes. But we're trying to limit it. So it's not going to be a case where you sort of like every week you sort of like go into a new office, etc. And I think there are tools that we could probably use in terms of Teams, Zoom, etc. that works quite well.
I would maybe add to tackle that from a maybe completely different angle that they were not asking about, but working at an institution like Investec certainly offers up opportunities for people to move internationally, still within the organisation. Kartik and I work closely with a colleague who's not that long ago actually moved back to the UK from Hong Kong, for example. So she worked out the Hong Kong office for many years. And we see a lot of colleagues moving over from South Africa and to the US and back from the US and all around the world. We've got, I don't know how many offices we've got actually. I should know that, shouldn't I, after 4 months, sorry. But yeah, certainly when you're in a large organisation, that's something that is always on the table for the right people. All jobs are advertised internally as well as externally.
Perfect, thank you. I've seen another question just come in from Timothy about the analyst level role. So yeah, the application for the analyst level role would be pretty similar. Probably not a video interview, but you would be meeting with HR and then a couple of stages with the business. So likewise, that role's already out. So if you wanted to put your application through for that, that would be fab. And then I think on the application, there's also the recruiter that's in charge of that role. So you can always loop in with her on LinkedIn or pop her an email, and she should be able to help you further. Okay, let's have a look if there's any other final questions. I think we've got about 4 minutes left. Kartik, what would you recommend? So what's your top tip for a junior person coming into your team?
It's a really good question. I think the most important thing, so for our role and our team, for someone coming in as a junior, the most important thing is to get involved with as much as they possibly could, whether that is client-facing work, whether that is administrative and client support work, whether that is investment work, arranging events for various clients. I mean, it's such a varied role and such a varied opportunity within our team and within most of the teams at Investec, that grabbing hold of all the different opportunities that are available is really key. And then on top of that, sounds like a lot, sorry, but on top of that, getting to know as many people within the organization as they possibly can, and putting yourself out there, actually, as Michelle said right at the start, bringing your whole self to work, being that, your individual self, and meeting loads and loads of different people, because that's the way you learn about other people, their backgrounds, but also what work they do. How can you help them, and how might they be able to help you at some stage? So those are the 2 bits of advice.
Yeah, I think that's really key, because as a junior coming into Investec, you're not expected to know everything before you come into the role. Like, the whole point as a junior coming into Investec, maybe on the internship program or a grad level role, is that, you're thirsty to learn. We want you to absorb all the information, and the only way you're going to do that is by networking within the business and learning as much as you can. So please don't feel worried if you don't know everything about the markets or everything about a particular role. The main thing is about learning. Okay, so I think we've come to the end of our webinar. Feels like it's kind of flown by. But I really hope that everyone who's joined today has got a really good high-level overview, at least, of Investec. And I hope, your notepads have got loads of notes on there. But please do reach out to us if you have any further questions, or if we didn't get to anything, please do let us know and we can get back to you on that. This whole session has been recorded, so If there's anything that you want to re-listen to or, share with anyone else, please do feel free to do that. It will be added to the skills workshop website after the session. Final thing for me is just to say thank you to our 3 brilliant speakers today who have done incredible talking about Investec and answering loads of questions. If anyone wants to add us on LinkedIn and share feedback, feel free to do that too. But otherwise, thank you and have a good evening. Bye everyone. Thank you.
Bye.